Listen very carefully. Do not look at Christian. Go down to the basement of your building, or hang up now. We have warned you not to go into the cities. In the cities, they are everywhere. Their plan is almost complete. If we do not stop them, they will enslave and butcher every good person left on Earth. You must prepare for the war.
I've often said one of my favorite types of horror is simply the pure sensation of something feeling off, like a bad gut feeling or peculiarity in your environment that you just cannot explain, a glitch in the matrix, so to speak. Perry Blackshear's 2015 psychological thriller They Look Like People captures the exact ominous and uncomfortable sensation I'm talking about. It tells the story of two best friends, Christian and Wyatt, who reconnect after the disheveled and mysterious Wyatt arrives out of the blue and begins to intrude upon Christian's life as he struggles to maintain his own turbulent existence. The surreal, menacing catch, however, is that it soon becomes clear that Wyatt believes humanity is slowly being invaded by an evil alien race who are quietly enslaving and replacing the people around him. It is a deeply perplexing film that will absolutely alienate anyone not into hardcore indie arthouse flicks that greatly stray from conventional filmmaking logic and practices. Much like Skinamarink, just to give a relative comparison, if you're open-minded to its jarring and immensely slow burn and happy to dwell in vagueness and ambiguity, you'll at the very least appreciate what Blackshear is going for with this eerily raw depiction of mental illness and male friendship. At barely 80 minutes long, not to sound cheeky, but you have to keep in mind that They Look Like People is technically an amateur production. Not only was it made by a few close friends over the course of a single week on a non-existent budget, but Perry Blackshear, who wears all the production hats, had a full-time 9-to-5 job waiting for him across the country once shooting was complete. As such, it admittedly lacks in polish and has a disjointed script that doesn't fully come together, but what is here is a strikingly curious watch for anyone interested in creepy, unnatural stimuli and relatable character-driven stories. So if you're open-minded to coming on this weird little journey with me, as always, brace yourself. Now, before we go any further, this video is sponsored by Raycon. Keep your ears open and your holiday playlists rolling with Raycon's bone conduction headphones. They're great for staying alert when on a jog or just kicking back, and for Black Friday and Cyber Monday, you can save up to 30% on all Raycon audio products. Raycon's bone conduction headphones use off-ear audio and send sound through vibration in your bones so you can keep your ears open to the world around you while still getting crystal clear music, podcasts, and calls. They've been the perfect companion for me during my regular commutes, especially during a recent work trip to London, because I can still listen to my podcasts while keeping myself safe when around traffic and other pedestrians during the non-stop hustle and bustle. Bone conduction headphones are built for all-day use thanks to their 13-hour battery life, IP68 waterproof and dustproof protection, and lightweight no-bud fit so they never fall out. However, here's the kicker. Raycon gives you premium performance at half the price of other big audio brands. From everyday essentials to the latest releases, and with a 30-day happiness guarantee, this holiday season is the perfect time to upgrade your sound or get ahead of gift buying for your loved ones. So why not join over 3 million happy customers before the deals are gone by going to buyraycon.com/RyanBC or scanning the QR code on screen to save up to 30% on Raycon products site-wide. One of the most distinctive elements that carries the psychological stress of the film is the brooding use of sound. Throughout the story, both Wyatt and Christian see and hear the world very differently based on their current emotional disposition. For Christian, he continuously listens to piercing, soft-spoken ASMR positivity audiobooks to constantly remind himself to be strong-minded and look forward, as though drowning out and repressing his negative thoughts that are expanded upon later in the story. We see his disciplined daily routine that conveys his efforts to maintain stability and a healthy lifestyle lifestyle, only for it to become disrupted by the unexpected arrival of Wyatt outside his apartment that, over the course of the story, gradually causes his focused mindset to slowly relapse. The editing style seems to draw heavily from mumblecore and French New Wave. The cuts are harsh and displaced, evoking both disorientation and restlessness, as scenes transition liberally without much rhythm to show the turbulence that's found its place back into Christian's world. The cinematic influences continue to echo in the socio-economic situation of the characters, as we're thrust into Christian's lonely one-bedroom apartment in New York as he attempts to climb the corporate ladder while living paycheck to paycheck. Bluntly speaking, both Christian and Wyatt live a very forlorn existence. It shows the depressing horror of reality long before Wyatt's psychosis, paranoia, and possible schizophrenia come into play. At times, it's a miserably voyeuristic watch. Both men are lonely and emotionally charged by their unstable circumstances, with Wyatt's mental health struggles causing him to leave his fiancée, while Christian's pursuit of happiness in being a loving father, husband, and having financial stability are tarnished by his own fiancée leaving him, with a box of her belongings remaining as a perpetual symbol of the bright future he once aspired for. As Perry Blackshear told Scream Horror Mag, the film drew inspiration from a good friend once confiding in Blackshear about their mental health struggles, and how it was thanks to the comfort of his close friends was he able to get through the darkest time in his life. Effectively, They Look Like People sees two men go through their own individual make-or-break experiences. While Wyatt's delusions stand out the most as he listens to voices that direct his attention, Christian's troubles are equally at play, as we see their futures rest on the outcome of what essentially becomes the tipping point of self-destruction. There are many times where the film's lack of cinematic harmony and overwhelmingly jarring delivery perfectly reflect my own dark struggles with mental health. It captures that sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach, that ugly, painful sensation of a panic attack, and the profound feeling of peril that petrifies the senses. While one could simply see the film as about a particular mental illness, it is much more about the complexity of how friends help each other through abstract mindsets none of us can truly understand. I can only speak for myself, but while many of us can relate to living with depression, suicidal ideation, and anxiety, just to name a few, we all fundamentally experience it in unique and different ways that it's not so easy to comprehend what others might be going through, even if we do feel empathy for those emotions. As Blackshear told Scream Horror Mag, he took further influence from Jeff Nichols' powerful psychological drama Take Shelter, about a man played by Michael Shannon suffering from schizophrenia, and the subsequent breakdown of his relationships with both his family and the townsfolk after he becomes obsessed with the belief that a world-ending storm is on its way. Like Take Shelter, the point of They Look Like People is not about whether or not Wyatt is right, but rather it attempts to destigmatize mental illness by showing how it can profoundly blur one's own reality and worldview. I have said this before, but it is genuinely impossible to articulate the utterly chaotic state of mind I've gone through in my worst moments, and what sticks out to me about They Look Like People is how it captures the terror of knowing that it is all in your head, but being powerless to control it. Granted, it still treats it as a two-way street as to not let it be an excuse for how you treat others. Part of it is needing a good support bubble, but it's just as much about having the willpower to proactively deal with it. Respectfully, and even regrettably, I understand this sentiment firsthand. The film shows how both Christian and Wyatt navigate their mental health struggles differently, but in contrast to Christian's efforts to work on his mental health via self-help audiobooks and routine, Wyatt listens to the voices in his head, telling him to prepare for war against the aliens or whatever vague alien force they are, and believes they can infect people by staring into their eyes.
Hello again, Wyatt. I assume by now that you know who I am. Is there something else in the basement with...
Just for some context as to what the voices actually tell Wyatt, it's pretty much a bunch of biblical bollocks about the demons attacking Jericho and surrounding the Temple of Solomon before targeting Golgotha, and Wyatt is one of the blessed who can sense them, but it's also deliberately contradictory. It's so vague about what specifically the entity is. However, the point is that he is consumed by the power of his illness, so to speak. He is completely aware of it, but is constantly distracted by it, and thus struggles to break away from it. Funnily enough, it actually reminded me of another Michael Shannon film I reviewed a while back called Bug, based on the play by Tracy Letts. Bug is a very different beast of a story entirely, but the general thesis is largely the same, bar the conclusion. It's about two disturbed strangers who find a perverse sense of comfort and companionship in their increasing paranoia, culminating in a dangerous environment where they succumb to their own illnesses. In fact, Blackshear even admits being conflicted by classifying They Look Like People as a horror film, and referred to it as more fittingly a psychological bromance. Hell, Wyatt's actor McLeod Andrews told Way Too Indie that he interprets the film as about how Christian perceives masculinity and how he wishes to see himself. Blackshear added to this by telling Way Too Indie the film reflects on how men deal with mental health. Sometimes we just don't know what to say or do to help. It can be awkward, confusing, sometimes frustrating, but ultimately the simple action of reminding each other that you always have their back means the world. As the story progresses, Wyatt tells his psychiatrist that the voices began as nightmares until he came to believe his fiancée was one of them, subsequently spiraling him into paranoia and leaving his fiancée, latching himself onto Christian as someone he can trust, even leaving his psychiatrist when he believes that he is one of them. Again, it shows how deep down in his own head he knows what's going on, but there is a perpetual doubt that he just cannot overlook. Eventually, the voices Wyatt hears manifest into Christian's boss and romantic interest Mara, and thus, in a disturbed kind of way, grind his paranoia and make it seem more real to the point we begin to see what he's possibly contemplating. The most distressing aspect about seeing Wyatt ruminate alone in his paranoia is that we, as the viewer, are made to feel an intense hopelessness towards his situation. He begins collecting an arsenal of weapons from a local hardware store, including sulfuric acid, and stares over the oblivious bystanders as though preparing for a mass killing spree. He even laments killing himself, but soon finds distraction in Christian, who by this point discovers he's been made redundant at work despite all his efforts at a promotion, and is left to wallow in his depression as his self-help routine comes crashing down. Soon we gravitate towards the inevitable fallout of Wyatt's psychosis as he sees Mara seemingly transform into one of the creatures and recruits Christian in his crusade as the world is about to come to an end. Christian basically follows him because he has no other purpose to keep him going. His own suicidal past comes back to haunt him as both men create this intimate vortex of emotional destruction in the basement of Christian's apartment after Wyatt believes the sirens have been signaled for a full-scale invasion. However, despite the messiness of the final sequence, I appreciate that the story does not end with the dire demise you likely anticipate, albeit even if it does remain ambiguous. In the basement, Wyatt comes to believe that Christian is infected, prompting Christian to prove his trust by allowing Wyatt to restrain him and prepare to exterminate him should he transform. Yet, before Wyatt kills Christian, he realizes his own delusion and is able to stop himself. It's not the best in terms of execution, but I sort of see what it's going for with this by showing how it's never too late to conquer your own demons. My conflicted reading of the scene is that Wyatt can still see through the lies. Of course, I do not believe he has definitely overcome his demons, but given his self-awareness throughout, he shows the ability to regain self-control even in his deepest, darkest moments. In a way, it's a positive contrast to what Smile does with its conclusion in regard to the allegory of mental illness. Wyatt's outcome echoes Christian's own prior journey from suicidal to finding a routine that give him purpose and direction. Even in the face of uncertainty, both men have found solace in each other. Granted, it's a somewhat perverse and abstract embrace, but the hug Christian asks for ties into the idea that they are not alone. Underneath it is this powerful sentiment about friendship in the face of evil. For how hopeless and nihilistic the film makes us feel, it finds a beautifully simple gesture to say more than words ever could. Personally, I'm not one for hugs because I'm just an awkward fucker. It's not because I don't like them, I just don't know how to give one effectively, so I often forget how much that moment means to so many people, especially friends. This hug comes from a real place. Both Christian and Wyatt still have a long road ahead, a never-ending hill to climb, but they realize they're not alone and can possibly figure it out together. Each day is anew, a brighter possibility. The feeling will always stay with them, but so will the goodness when they see beyond the darkness.